rising, the light on the horizon. We are the truth already spoken, the real nobody's token. We are the seed in every flower, the source of all the power.
Dr. Cheryl Phyllis Smith is co-founder of Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars. She is an associate professor in the Department of Educational Theory and Practice at the University of Georgia. She is the most prolific researcher focused on Black families who homeschool in the United States. She is author of numerous articles on homeschooling and author of Exploring Single Black Mothers' Resistance Through Homeschooling.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is our first Black Family Home Educator and Scholars Tea Talk. We are here to focus on homeschooling of neurodiverse children. Just want to first tell you that this came about from the teach-in that we had last month. This was one of the themes that came out and one of the areas that we thought we would begin to try to address first. We plan to do tea talks once a month, and so here we go. We have a wonderful panelists here who have agreed to talk to you. They have something to say about this topic, and this is a space where you can please offer your questions. You can send it to us via the chat and we will see it and put them in. But let me first begin by having our panelists introduce themselves. And we'll start with Coley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Coley Aziza. I am an educator. I've worked in Prince George's County, which is in Maryland. This is my 29th year, and I specialize in working with early childhood level students and also students that have special needs.
Brandi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brandi Hennek Crawford. I am also an educator. I teach educational research at Western Carolina University, and I am also the mother of 8-year-old twins who each have their own neurodiverse identities. My daughter is on the autism spectrum, and my son has ADHD.
And Phyllis.
Hello, my name is Phyllis Smith Asanyanbi. I am a homeschooling mother. I have been homeschooling, I believe this is my 14th year. I have a son who is on the autism spectrum, and I think I bring a unique perspective to neurodiversity because I have adult ADHD, and in the past 12 years or so, I also realized that I am on the autism spectrum. So I think I have a unique perspective about all of this.
And Joelle.
Hi everyone, my name is Joelle Naomi, and I'm the founder of Denver Independent School, which is an umbrella school for K-12 home-based learners, and we have a particular focus on underrepresented groups and providing solutions to helping those groups have access to their right to homeschool. We'll launch in 3 years, but in the meantime, we have an initiative called the Black Homeschooling Sustainability Initiative that specifically focuses on Black families and barriers that prevent our community from accessing their right to homeschool. I'm a homeschooling mama of 2. I have a 16-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. We've been homeschooling not quite 14 years yet, but I think we'll be entering our 7th year this year. My daughter, she has been diagnosed with dyslexia, dysgraphia, math disability, and then also an unspecified form of a processing disorder. So we've had an interesting journey allowing homeschooling to be a safe space to help her with her particular needs.
I can't hear you. Joelle, something I can't hear you all of a sudden.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Were you able to hear everything I said?
No, just what you just got through saying, I didn't hear.
Oh, okay. Did anyone else hear me?
I heard you.
Oh, okay. So
I heard everything.
Okay, good. Okay. So when we think about neurodiverse children, there are so many, they are diverse within themselves, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get started by asking you, each of you on the panel, to think about one aspect of your teaching that you think would be helpful for other home educators to think about, to consider. You can jump in, and anybody can jump in.
Well, I think that even, you know, when we talk about neurodiversity, like you said, there's so much diversity within neurodiversity. With my son, and, you know, autism presents itself differently in different people. I found that he's very visual, you know, but he can also learn in a variety of ways. So I didn't have to just stick with the visual. You know, he's an extremely good reader. He is also, you know, kinesthetic learning. A lot of different things worked for him at different times in his development. What worked for him when he was younger wouldn't necessarily work for him now. He's a senior in high school. He does a lot of independent study because that's what he prefers to do, and it works well for him. When he was younger, I used to have, like, for example, for math, we would always use Math UC, which is a curriculum that worked well for him because you could move the different, I forget what you call them, but movable pieces, so you could actually see the math, you know, as opposed to me just, you know, writing numbers on a board, or him writing numbers. It just helped him with the math if he was able to visualize it. So I think it all depends on your child. You have to discover what works for them, and that may change as they grow and develop.
Yeah, I totally agree, Phyllis. It really depends upon the child.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that has worked for me, both in the classroom and then also offering it as a suggestion to parents, is breaking down a task into steps for the students that need it. For example, I had a young man who, and it worked in the classroom for him, but at home, mom was having a terrible time trying to get him to go to bed, or to complete the things that she needed him to do before he went to bed, brushing his teeth and so on. And so what we did was we broke down the task that she required for him to go to bed into steps. So first, and you know, and visually, we had pictures. 1, and then a picture of what you wanted him to do. 2, and then the next thing. 3, you know, next thing, until, you know, so let's say it's four things that led to what you wanted to finally be in bed. Mm-hmm. And that really, mom was shocked. His mom was shocked at how, you know, she was reluctant. You know, I think she was like, yeah, whatever. It works in the classroom, but I don't know about it at home. And but once she did it, it worked like just him seeing those pictures and pictures of him. So, I mean, for some children, the pictures could work, just a picture of somebody doing it. But to me, it works even better when you can actually take a picture of the child doing it. And it's something that can be done now that we have phones and, you know, we can take pictures. And so it's something that can be done. I think it would be, maybe not, everyone may not have the printers to do it and all that. But if you do, it really, really, really works.
You know, you can go to places like CVS and make pictures really cheaply from your phone.
Okay, that would be great. That really works, breaking things down for certain children that really need to see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We actually did that years ago when we were trying to potty train Elizabeth. We had pictures in a booklet of all the steps, and we read it every day. And it worked. She's potty trained.
So it works, yes.
Yeah. But one of the things I would say that I do, which is I guess, maybe not like a pedagogical technique, but just like you think about being culturally responsive and having representation of people from different backgrounds within your curriculum, also showing neurodiverse people or animals, because my kids are still small, within what we read. So we have a book that's like All My Stripes, which is about a little zebra who is talking about how his autism stripe is the one that everyone sees. We also have another one about Aspie girls. And as Phyllis said, autism in particular presents itself so differently. So sometimes Elizabeth doesn't, do the things that are, characteristic of what you would see. But I think really driving home that, neurodiversity is just another type of diversity. And there are people out there like you. You are not the only one who, may be awkward in a social setting or something like that. So just letting her know that she's not alone and that it is okay to be different. It's not something that you need to be ashamed of or that you need to, try to hide. And also, we've really gone through having her specifically to be able to articulate, I'm on the autism spectrum. That means I process information differently, to teach her how, when she's in spaces where I'm not there or her brother's not there, who for years was kind of her mouthpiece until we split them, so that she can advocate for herself and what she needs. I think that's an important part of teaching her as well.
I agree. It's very important, and especially as they get older, that they learn how to advocate for themselves. I had a real problem, being a very overprotective mother. There were periods, most of my son's life, he has been homeschooled, but there were periods when he went to public school. And I remember him wanting to go walk to school by himself, or finally he had met a friend and he was walking to school with this friend and the friend's father and family. It was on his route to school. And I remember I used to literally be way, way behind watching. I mean, it was like I had problems with letting go and letting him speak for himself. My son is 2E, so he's twice exceptional. He wasn't diagnosed until he was 8. Okay, so that's pretty late. But back then they had a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. Now they just put it all under the umbrella of autism spectrum disorder. But what kind of overshadowed them being able to diagnose him correctly was because of his intelligence. So he compensates a lot with that. But I would just see other things, and I just knew that there were other issues going on. And once I found out, what they were, it was like I became this extremely overprotective mother, to the point where at one point my pastor told me, he said, "You're crippling him," and I had to learn how to let go and to allow him, because he even told me one time I said something, we were somewhere, and then when we got home, he's like, "I could have answered that myself." So he was letting me know, even though I don't like to talk very much, which he doesn't, and maybe I don't speak up quickly enough for you, you don't have to always speak for me. He's an only child, so there were no siblings. It was just me and my son. But yeah, they have to learn how to speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves, and he's learned how to do that once I learned how to let go a little bit.
Let me ask you all about your experiences getting services from, do you do that from the school system, Are there laws, do you know of, or policies to support your teaching that you can use as home educators? Or does that vary by state to state?
It varies by state to state. I've done a lot of research on the Homeschool Legal Defense Association website. They actually, I don't know if they still have this, but they used to have it like listed which states, like say if your child has special needs, in certain states and districts, you can still get services through the public schools. And some you don't, you can't. Where I live in Illinois at the time when my son was in public school, he was in, we were in Chicago, and when I pulled him out to homeschool him, I found out that I could still get some services. Like he went to, for example, he had speech therapy from the time he was 3.5 until he was 12 through the public school system. That was the one service that I could get through them. At one point they offered a social skills group. I didn't think it met off enough, so I found a private one, and it was paid for by Medicaid because I didn't have any other insurance at the time. This was in Illinois, but I'm sure that what Medicaid offers and what school districts and states offer, I know that that varies from state to state. Mm-hmm.
I know for me, some of the families that I've worked with, even currently, are just having a hard time, even though they have the right to get the help and the services. The schools are not set up to help facilitate that. And a lot of times they don't even know that they can, or they're pretending like they don't know. I'm not quite sure, but it has been a real fight. And I know for us, when I first started homeschooling my daughter, she was in the public school system, and I couldn't get her on an IEP until I got an official diagnosis from somewhere. But my health insurance didn't cover the testing, and then we couldn't afford it out of pocket. And it was just a whole ordeal just to get her the help and the services that she needed. And so that's one of the main reasons that I think pushed us into committing to the decision to homeschool. So I think I really appreciate that question, because I think that if we can really truly understand what our law permits, then we can feel more empowered to push back on the public schools to do what they're supposed to do if they're legally required to help.
You made a really good point, because I know that when I first pulled my son out of school to homeschool him, I was discouraged from doing it. I got a lot of misinformation from the school telling me, that this wasn't something. They first told me it wasn't something I could do because he had special needs, which I found out that was not true, because I did some research. And then it was a matter of, well, he would just be a lot better off in school. Well, that may have been true at some schools. I have nothing against public schools. I think that there are wonderful public schools, and there are public schools that are not so great. Unfortunately, when the neighborhood that I lived in, when my son was young, it just was not a good school. It wasn't a good school, and I just felt like I could do better with him. And so I pulled him out of school, got misinformation, but then I realized, with IEPs, with homeschooling, with anything that involves your child's education, you've got to do the research. You can't just go by what somebody said. Oh, well, someone told me that, you could get these services or those services. Sometimes, like when we're members of online groups and so forth, somebody will post some information, right? But it doesn't necessarily apply to your state or your local school district. You have to do the research. It's really important. I can't emphasize it enough.
When you think about homeschooling your neurodiverse children, what have you learned about the setup, or setting up the classroom? And Coley, also, what have you learned from your teaching experience that's important for the schooling environment itself?
Well, I can say this because I actually, which I didn't mention, my niece is a neurodiverse learner, and I live with my sister and her children. And so one of the things I'll say about my niece, she's actually 19. She just made 19. She also, she's had the diagnosis of autism and also intellectual disability. So for her, actually being at home has really been better for her. We've really seen her blossom because the transitioning for her was just too much. There was so much going on for her, going to school, and then she went to a program after school, and then eventually she got home, and it was just too much for her. So the sort of reducing the transitions for her and her being at home has really helped for her. So pretty much we have been homeschooling her, and that's worked a lot better. Not officially, but I would say pretty much my sister has taken that on. Yeah.
Is your niece still in school?
She is. She'll be until she's 21.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she's still in school.
I would say for us, having a learning environment where we believe that learning happens any and everywhere. So we have a classroom sitting in it, and we use it if necessary, but we spend a lot of time schooling in various places, whether it's the coffee shop or the library or a nature walk or in the backyard or, going fishing, and allowing just her everyday life experiences to be something that we turn into academic credit or academic value, and to do it in a way that's really natural. When we first started homeschooling, I definitely was trying to recreate the public school in the home because it's all that I knew. And I think also to your first question that you asked earlier, one of the things that's helped is letting go of the shoulds of education and of learning. So in order for you to learn X, Y, and Z, you should do it in this space, or you should do it using these books or this methodology. And once I really started to let go of those shoulds and allow her to tell me what it is that she needed, where she found joy in learning, what she's interested in, then I just became a facilitator of that learning. And the more that we've let go of those shoulds, the more freedom we had found. Because at first it was definitely a fight and overwhelming, and I felt in over my head, but I also knew that she wasn't getting the help that she needed in school. So yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to just follow up with something that Joelle said. Just in being a classroom teacher, one of the things that I learned where my children learn best is by taking them out of the classroom, like you said, going outside and doing things outside, wherever like you said, wherever you can learn, and also encouraging parents to, wherever you take them, wherever you are, learning can go on. But I spent a lot of time outside with my students, and I'm a city girl. I don't even really like being outside that much, but that's how my students learn best. So if we need to go out there and plant and dig and do, that's where they were learning. So I totally agree with you.
One of my favorite stories that I like to tell about my daughter, her name is Serenity. So when we first started homeschooling, she was in 3rd grade, and she just had a terrible time writing because of the dysgraphia. And I had our little classroom set up and the whiteboard, and I was trying to teach her. Don't ask me why I was trying to teach a 3rd grader how to write a 5-paragraph essay, but I was.
Okay.
And so that was just difficult in and of itself, but she just didn't like to write. So I thought that's what the issue was. But one day I was literally sitting on my bathroom floor crying because I just was like, I'm failing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to ruin her academic life. And I just had this inclination that we needed to take a drive to the sunflower fields. And we did. We took a drive down to the sunflower fields, and it's near our airport. And we sat on top of the car after we ran through the fields, and we're looking at the different bugs that we've never seen before. I had no idea those things existed, and all the different petals in the sunflowers, and just all the things, right? And we went and we laid on top of the car, and we tried to count from 0 to 100 as fast as we could in between planes landing. And so she had a difficult time, I think counting past 30. And so it was fun, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? And so when we would get to 31 and she didn't know what was next, then, I would help her say it with her, and it became a game. And then the plane would come and we'd go, oh, we have to start again. And when we came back home, so at the time my son was actually in public school, I needed to go pick him up, and I left her there. And when I came back, she had written on her own volition, a poem about our day out in the sunflower field. And I actually have it framed because that's how impactful it was. I cannot tell you the level of tears and just drama trying to get her to write something. But that taught me that, number one, she needs to be inspired by experience. That when she feels connected to me and to her environment, she feels safe to be herself, and that learning needed to be on her terms. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, she ended up writing. And so we've been able to build momentum on that, where today, like this last semester, she came to me and said, I want to write a paper on feminism. Okay.
Okay. That's cool.
Yes, and she wrote it, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm so proud of her.
Yes.
That is wonderful. Oh, I love that. Does anyone else have lived experiences of success that we can share and uplift?
Well, my son, he's still in high school. It's taken extra time to homeschool him. He doesn't have an intellectual disability, but he has sort of, like a lot of people on the spectrum, they have what doctors call comorbidities. I just call them challenges. They might have something else going on, like depression or anxiety or OCD type behavior or whatever. And so, I kind of, at one point, I felt like I don't understand why it's taking him extra time. He's so smart. But then I thought about, well, if he was in public school, he would have the extra time. They would give him until he was 21 to finish high school. That, according to the IEP he had when he was in public school. But my son kind of, like, through the years, he taught me how to teach him. I started off like, when I first thought about homeschooling, I really didn't think I could do it on my own. So I tried using the Chicago Virtual Charter School. They were using the K-12 curriculum, and he just was not going to sit there at that computer. Remember, he was like in first grade. He told me, this is boring. He's very vocal when it comes to things he doesn't like. And so then I, tried the school at home approach. That didn't work very well. And I sort of just became an eclectic homeschooler, using what would work for him at the time. And that's when I began to realize, like Dr. Cheryl said, there's a lot of diversity within neurodiversity. You think of some autistic people, or people who have autism, I like to word it that way, that they're not very social. Well, my son, he was, in a sense, social. He wanted to be around other kids. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? Homeschooling him. He's an only child. We were not at home a lot. Community programs, dance classes. I remember taking him to biddy basketball, taking him to programs at the library, taking him where he learned how to play chess when he was 8. and taking him where he could play chess with other kids. He taught me what he needed, other than academics, just by, not that he talks a lot, but he would just express how he felt. Oh, I'm bored, or, where are the other kids? I mean, he had a preschool, pre-K public school experience, and he had also attended kindergarten, a private school for kindergarten. So he knew what a classroom setting was like. He expressed that he had social needs. And so I'm like, I have to find a way for him to be able to fulfill those needs. And, I would say he's 20 now. Okay. And he's finishing his last year of high school. And things are just so different. I remember when he was diagnosed, and I was in tears. And the doctor who diagnosed him had a daughter who had Asperger's syndrome. And he told me, you have to understand, Ms. Asanyambi, the way things look today isn't the way that they're going to look 10 years from now. Your son's going to grow, he's going to develop, he's going to progress. He said the same thing for children who might have autism and an intellectual disability. We all grow, we all develop. I would say that my son has turned out to be a very, I don't know, he's just like this super intellectual person. He's always got his head in a book, okay? Always reading, about, he has like some very specific interests, which a lot of people on the spectrum do, including myself. He's always reading about philosophy and theology, and he taught himself Latin. I mean, just because he wanted to learn it. He's just, I just think of all the things that we went through, when he was younger, the acting out, he would slam his body against the wall. I would have to, they call it sensory seeking behavior. And I just think of all those things and the kind of young man that he is now. It's been a long journey, and a lot of it didn't happen in homeschool. I used professionals, took my son to what they called it play therapy. Well, it was behavior therapy. He had occupational therapy, he had speech therapy. I mean, just because you're homeschooling doesn't mean that you can do everything at home. Okay. His experiences with children we would go to the library just so he could be with the kids after school, and he would play Minecraft with them and Roblox, and he was really good at it, and he would teach them how to get better. And they were like, oh, David's the expert at this or that. And I mean, that made him feel good about himself. I mean, we used everything. It wasn't just us staying at home. Yeah, the academics, that's very important, but the social emotional learning is very important it's important for what we call neurotypical kids who don't have neurodiversity, and it's very important for neurodiverse children to learn all these things, how to get along with people and how to be around other people, and how to, we just learned so much outside of home. And a lot of professionals helped me. Even when my son, part of the reason he had speech therapy was he had an articulation disorder. Also, he had issues with pragmatics. And I mean, the speech therapist would give me the exercise, like, we'll do this with him at home to help him to pronounce his SH and sounds, and practice this with him. And they just gave me a lot of tips, and I got a lot of help from professionals. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to, oh, sorry.
You're good.
I like to echo what you're saying. I need to first clarify and say this is going to be my first year homeschooling. So I'm brand new. But I too have been capitalizing on professionals. My daughter has she's exited speech therapy, but we have a cognitive behavioral therapist, which we were referred to through our doctor. And depending on what your child is dealing with, if you can get referrals to these specialists, and sometimes your insurance will cover them, or whereas with our cognitive behavioral therapist, we have a small copay, which I think is totally worth it for the exercises she does with Elizabeth. And when I started having these issues with my son, even though this therapist wasn't seeing my son, she gave me insights on what steps to go next. And so, and if you can find one, they're not, well, I'm sure you all can find them easier than I can, because you all are in more metropolitan areas than rural Appalachia. But having a developmental pediatrician can often point you in directions of not only speech pathologists and behavioral therapists, but those who have expertise working with children. And like you said, they often give you tasks to do at home to help cultivate those different skills and abilities and whatnot. And so that is, and I would also say, while there has been great support from within the school when we were in public school, I don't want to say anything disparaging about the good folks working in that space, but the people I've dealt with outside of that space have been maybe a little bit better. That's what I'll say. So.
Okay.
Brandi, when you say a developmental pediatrician, I've never heard that. Like, what does that mean?
So here in Asheville, I don't live in Asheville. I live in a rural area. But in Asheville, we have the Olson Health Center that has a whole battery of pediatricians who are experts in developmental disorders and delays. And so in addition to helping just general pediatric things, they kind of, well, we're going to send them for this hearing test, or we're going to send them for X, Y, and Z. And often the pediatricians so like we have a general pediatrician, she will say, you know what, let's send you to the Huff Center where these folks are the real experts on these things. So they have an eye where if you're suspecting something like Tourette's or autism or something that the regular pediatrician doesn't think they have the capacity to address, these pediatricians, or I'm sure they're physicians too, but I only know about the pediatric side, right. Are kind of like, that's their specialty. Yeah. Like if they were a cardiac or something. So.
Okay, that's a good thing. I get it now. Khadijah Toms asked if we could discuss transition services and resource options for homeschool students ages 18 to 21 years old.
Okay. I took my son when he was about, 16 is when he was 16 when we moved from Chicago to a small town in Illinois. And I kept thinking, well, what about transition? What about transitioning? What about, his furthering his education, those kinds of things. So I took him to the Office of it's called Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And so they tested my son, and he worked with a lady about, she was helping him like narrow down things about career choices, what he might want to do after he finishes high school. And it gave him some insight, because he kind of was like, all over the place. My son's an artist, professional artist, and he also, he can do a lot of different things. And so, we worked with those people, and they're like, well, when he finishes high school, just bring him back to us, and they're going to help pay for all of his education if he decides to go to college. Or they said if he wanted to go to some type of like vocational program, perhaps like maybe he might not want to go to college. If he wants to go and take up some kind of training, that they're also there for him. So I think that if you are homeschooling, you may need some help with transitioning. I know that in public schools, I believe that they help children with transitioning. They start that process when they're maybe like 14 or so, because you do have to think about the point at which, you know, your child becomes an adult, and based on their ability, what they can and can't do. You know, so the vocational rehabilitation helped me with that. And I felt like a lot of things, he accepted them more readily coming from someone other than me. Of course, you know, when they get to be a certain age, they're like that. But I mean, all teenagers. And it made him think about, you know, what he wanted to do with his future. And he decided that he would go to community college, and then after that he would transfer to a 4-year university. But of course, all, you know, whatever your child decides to do or wants to do, you know, it has to be based, of course, in reality on what their capabilities and potential are.
You're muted.
Who's muted?
Dr. Cheryl. She's
Oh,
talking.
okay.
I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, it's a lot to keep up with here. Okay.
It is.
Rhonda McKnight wanted to know how old your son was when you took him to the vocational rehab.
My son was 16.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was a good age, because I had started asking him things like, you know, have you thought, you know, I've been asking for some years. And at one point it was like all he would talk about is he wanted to go to art school. You know, he's a really good artist. He sold his first 2 pieces when he was 11 years old. And, you know, but then, but he kind of like, when he got 14, he was 14 when he he didn't lose interest in the art, but he just started like branching off with other things. Like, you know, I want to try, you know, to learn coding. I want to do this. I want to do. So I'm like, have you thought about what you want to do when you finish high school? And he's like, well, I'm not sure. And I just felt like somebody else could maybe help him. You know, like I said, the testing where they show what you're good at, and, you know, talking to somebody other than me, because it can't just be mom all the time. You know? Yeah. So he was 16. Mm-hmm.
Is vocational and rehabilitation services a government program, or is it through a non-government organization?
I believe it's a government program. Okay. I will find out more about that, and I will post it to the BFHES resource group, so other people will know. I will definitely do that.
Thank you. Let's talk about sustainability. How do we continue to support parents who are homeschooling neurodiverse students? What are some ideas? Are there support groups that you go to? Are there other spaces in Facebook? Do we need to create one?
Well, I did ask my sister before I got on here to give me a group that she has gone to, and she said, and I don't know if any of the other, if the parents here or educators have gone to the One World Center for Autism. She gave me that that organization, and she said that they've really been helpful for her with getting parent support. And they also offer respite care, or ideas about where you can get respite care for your children. So I said, let me just, you know, just go straight to the mama in the house and ask her. And she said the One World Center for Autism. It's actually here in Prince George's County in Lanham, Maryland. But she said that, you know, they offer support, you know, information for everyone.
Any other thoughts of how to sustain?
I would say that when I was finally able to get my daughter diagnosed, it was through the Children's Hospital. And unfortunately, though, there was an 18-month wait list. And so I appreciate this question just because for a year and a half and even longer than that, when I first started homeschooling, I had no idea how to help her. I knew that there was something going on, but I couldn't diagnose her. I didn't know what the issue was. Once we got the diagnosis and the evaluation, we were kind of left with, well, this is what this is, and here's some suggestions for curriculum, but that's as far as it went. And so it wasn't until we attended a homeschooling conference and heard a lady there by the name of Diane Kraft speak about exactly what we needed to hear. She talks about left brain dominant learners versus right brain dominant learners, and has a company that does evaluations for your child and learning plans and all of that. But I bring up the homeschooling conference because it was there that my whole world opened up to the fact that I wasn't the only one with a child that was struggling, and other resources that were out there for support.
You know, I had to think a little bit because I remember when I started homeschooling my son, you have to think it was, 2006 or so. I remember trying to find a homeschool support group. Now, this is before my son's diagnosis. I knew that there were things that were amiss, but I could not put my finger on them. Okay. Sort of like what you were saying, Joelle. It was like, okay, I know that there's something that's atypical, but I'm not sure what it is. So I had tried I'd find homeschool support groups. I couldn't not find a group that fit. There were not a lot of spaces that included very many Black people, because most of the homeschooling groups, they were not in Chicago, which was where I lived at the time. They were like in the suburbs. And so we would travel a long way to go to these places. My son just didn't fit in. Finally, I found a group in a near northern suburb of Chicago called Homeschooling Gifted Students. He fit in there quite well, but then I was concerned. I'm like, we're the only Black faces here. You know, I mean, I wanted my son to be around people who look like him, and also not just around people who had the same, say, IQ, but you need to associate with all kinds of people, because that's what the world consists of. You know, not everyone is white, not everyone is gifted in the sense of IQ. You need to learn how to live in this world. And so I didn't find a lot with homeschool support. I just started using community resources because I came to the conclusion, well, he doesn't necessarily have to be around other homeschooled kids. He just needs to be around other kids. So that's when I started, you know, like in Chicago, they had a lot of after school programs that the public and private school kids would go to. I would let him, you know, I would take him, you know, and I felt like we got a lot of support through some of those, I would say, non-traditional places. You know, the library was a great source of support, in that they had a lot of programs where he could just, he went to social skills groups. I wanted him to exercise his social skills. I'm like, he's going to need to know how to do these things when he grows up. And so that worked out quite well. But I think as far as online, I think it might be helpful to create something, you know? I was thinking about, I moderate African-American single parent homeschoolers, and it's a Facebook group. I was thinking about polling people to see if that's something that they'd be interested in.
Try it. Let's do it. Let's see.
I will be in touch with you.
Are there, Khadija Ali Coleman, Dr. Khadija Ali Coleman asked us about if there's any particular apps or resources, materials that have really been invaluable to you as you're thinking about working with your neurodiverse children in particular.
I did want to mention two sites, autismclassroomresources.com.
Okay.
And there's another site, teacherspayteachers.com. So they offer a lot of different things, but the teachers pay teachers. But specifically for our neurodiverse students, they offer visual schedules that you can download. Something called a first then board for some of our young people who have difficulty with transitioning. A task analysis, which is what I was talking about, where you take someone through the steps of an activity, and also social stories for our young people who have difficulty with communication and socializing. It will at least give you an idea, because you can make your own social story up about, getting along, playing with your friends, but you can get a sense of what all those things are and then create your own, or if you like what's there, you can just download it.
I remember using, have you ever heard of this, Coley? Carol Gray's Social Stories book? I think it was, the author's name was Carol Gray. I've never heard of Carol Gray, yeah. But she wrote,
really well.
Right, she wrote these social stories, and I thought about it. You could write your own social stories.
You can do your own, yeah.
But it helped my son a lot to prepare him. Like, he had huge problems with transitions when he was younger. I mean, it was just like he would go into meltdowns about transitions. He would go, it was just a bad scene. And so, but if I could prepare him for the barber shop or the library or the restaurant, and that's what these social stories do. They let the kids know what's going to happen, basically step by step. And that reduces a lot of the anxiety. I remember using those when he was younger, the social stories. And I also remember, like you were talking about before, about the parent who was trying to get their child to do things before bed. I remember one of my therapists created it was like a huge key ring, and it had pictures on it. And we would put the pictures in the order of the things he needed to do during the day. And I thought it was very helpful. I'm like, wow, I had never thought of doing anything like this, because I would just have so many problems with, he was like a creature of habit, and if things just did not go according to plan, oh my gosh, the day might not be so good, for me or for him. But the doing things in order, the pictures, and we would just have all these pictures on a key ring, like from what you do from morning until night, all in order.
That's really good. Rhonda McKnight shared that her son, who is 14, has been going to the Teenage Conversation Club that's available on OutSchool, and he had great success with that. So that's another, OutSchool is another source.
I had never heard of that, the Teenage Conversation Club. That sounds really good.
It does. It does. And the second website that you talked about, Phyllis, was Teacher Pay Teachers.
I think Coley mentioned that.
Oh, yeah, it's teacherspayteachers.com, but you'd have to look up specifically the visual schedules, first then board, task analysis, those specific things that I mentioned, and then you can find it because they have all kinds of things on there. But the autismclassroomresources.com, they have all those things. When you go on there, you'll see them right away.
And Rhonda McKnight shared that she's on her phone right now listening to us, but she will share the link to the Teenage Conversation Club. She said the facilitator is Black, which of course she loves. So that's really a really good course for us.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
When my son was younger, I found it so hard to find Black professionals. And at one point we found a a Black therapist, a Black male therapist for him. I was elated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
It was hard.
Yeah. Well,
You
we
know, I
have about
mentioned,
oh, go ahead, Joel.
I'm just going to say I mentioned meeting Diane Kraft at a homeschool conference, and she has the Right Brain Learning System, which tremendously helped us. And if you go to her website, dianecraft.org, she has her system there, but she also has a lot of information that's up there for free. So articles that you can search by topic, and it gives you step-by-step suggestions on what you can do in your learning environment. And then, of course, I would actually recommend her services. One of the things that was really a game changer for us is that not only did she put together a learning plan that catered to my daughter as a right brain dominant learner, but we also added a nutritional piece to it. So we had supplements that we took for over the course of 12 weeks, and it was a whole thing. And I could see immediate changes in attention, her ability to focus, her ability to remember, her ability to process. And anytime that we haven't done the supplements, I can see the difference. And so along with that, what I want to say too, though, is that you asked earlier, like, what are the resources for sustainability? And I think I would like to see more conversations with funders to open their minds around providing more grants and scholarships to homeschooled families in general, but also to have this population in mind as well. Because when, at least for us, when we weren't able to get the services that we needed through the public school or through our health insurance, I had to pay for these things out of pocket. And it can be expensive, especially with the supplements. We ended up spending a lot of money, so it was an extreme sacrifice. And I would search for scholarships, and we just didn't fit the bill. You know, maybe there was something out there, but we just didn't meet all the criteria. And I don't know if anybody else knows of any out there, but I just had a really hard time finding scholarships that were specifically for homeschoolers and students that are dealing with a variety of neurodiversity. And then lastly, I was just going to say also that I have found, Phyllis, you mentioned the on the key ring that you would have for your son. I did the same thing with my daughter, and it just didn't work because I realized that she really actually needed me to walk throughout the day with her.
Okay.
So like getting up, let's go to the bathroom and brush our teeth together. I still use the cards for us to go through. And I even included cards that had like positive affirmations, like "you got this." Okay, let's.
Yes.
But when I expected her to say, you know, here, go do that, it didn't work. So yeah, I just want to encourage parents out there that it's okay. What we might call hand holding, which I don't completely like that term, but I think it's relationship building and feeling like you have someone there with you every step of the way, and that helps you remember because of the relationship.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, our kids are so different. You know what I'm saying? It's like when we talk about that diversity within neurodiversity, sometimes I used to get upset when people would just say special needs kids, because I'm like, well, what does that mean? I mean, you know, that encompasses a whole lot: intellectual disability, dysgraphia, dyslexia, autism, ADHD, and it's sort of like people sometimes just want to put all of the children into one pot, so to speak. You know, he has special needs. Well, what are his needs? Or she has special needs. What are the special needs? You know what I'm saying? It's just like sort of people use it as like a catch-all phrase. And I never liked that, because I'm like, it's not specific enough, you know?
I don't like it either, because I think it others our children.
Yes.
The truth is, everybody has needs.
That's right.
And they're all different from each other. And so,
Right.
Yeah.
I have special needs. You have special needs. I mean, we all have special needs, right?
I think that we all have special needs. And
Yes.
being in the classroom, whether you have an IEP or you don't have an IEP, everybody has their own special needs, including the adults, you know, the administrators, everybody, parents. We all have something about us that's unique and wonderful, and we have our strengths and we have our things that we need a little extra help with.
That's
you know.
very true.
Mm-hmm.
When I was teaching elementary school, we had the special education teacher would push into the classroom and we would plan together. And what we found was whatever she was doing with the children she was supposed to be seeing really helped a lot of the other children.
Yes.
Too. I mean, it's just good teaching, right? To
Mhm.
meet those unique needs of kids. So, you know, sometimes you couldn't tell who was who in the classroom because she was teaching me how to reach children, other children too. So
That's the whole thing with universal design. When you teach to those at the margin, you will always capture those who are not.
yeah.
So true.
That's right.
So true.
Well, we are at the point of 3 o'clock, and any final words? I cannot thank you all enough for sharing the wisdom that you had with us today. Anything that we didn't discuss that you wish we had?
I don't have any final words, but I would just like to throw out a couple of other resources.
Okay, great.
The Teach Center from UNC Chapel Hill and the Market Center in Atlanta. Those are both centers that support children with autism. But just like Joyelle said, you know, they have these long waiting lists and you have to, you know, wait months and months and months a lot of times before you can get into these places. And I don't want to, you know, elevate one app over another, but Freckle is a good one for little kids that differentiate and adapts to the level where the child is. And as the parent or the teacher, you can kind of say, well, you know, I want them to focus on X, Y, or Z. And I say that cautiously because I don't want anyone to go, you know, get their kid an iPad and say, hey, do this app for an hour. But, you know, as a supplement to other things, Freckle and its various, you know, partners could be useful. The thing with Freckle is, though, it's free, whereas like Adapted Mind and some of the others cost. So.
Oh, I wanted to mention, you mentioned Adapted Mind. I don't know if they still have scholarships, but they used to. I remember I got one from them. What I would do as a homeschooler, my situation was very different when my son was young than it is now. I was very poor, okay? I was homeschooling through abject poverty. And I was a divorced parent with just doing everything solo. And so what I would do, like if I wanted a particular curriculum for my son, I would write to the company because I was like piecemealing together working from home. And part of the work that I did was a writer. It was a while before it became lucrative when I was writing articles online. But I would tell them, you know, if you will give me your curriculum, I will write a review. Okay. So this is how I would get curriculum for my son because I couldn't afford it. In later years, I went back to school. You know, I got a degree. I'm a teacher myself, but I teach adults. English is a second language. So, I mean, I was like, there's got to be a way that I can get this. If I found something that it looked like that that it would work for him, I'm like, I'm just going to write these people and ask them. You know, or can I get a scholarship, or can I write a review, and you know, if you will give me the curriculum, and it worked.
Wow. That's
Yes.
a great idea. Oh, I hate to end this, but we've gone past the hour. But again, I want to thank you. We will, Phyllis, keep thinking about if we need a separate place.
I will.
To support families of neurodiverse children who are homeschooling. And we'll get I think Dr. Khadija has been doing a great job of posting things on the Facebook. I was afraid to touch the Facebook, y'all, because when we were doing those lives, when I touched the Facebook, it messed everything up. So,
Okay.
but we will post the some of all these resources up on that Facebook resource group.
Okay.
And, I want to thank you again for our first Tea Talk, for participating, and this was a great success. Some of the comments in the Facebook, they're saying it's great and thanking you, and so I want to thank you as well. And please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, you
Thanks
too.
for
You
having
too.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.